Welcome back, everyone, to OpenLine. We are talking about online scams. So many people have had to deal with this. It's something that it seems like you get calls about this a lot, and often we're able to identify them, but sometimes and far too often people fall prey to these things. That's what we're talking about tonight. We have with us Ann Ward. She's CEO of CircleClick Media, joining us via Zoom, all the way from Austin, Texas. And we kind of set the table for the discussion in the first segment. I want to talk about another whole area, email. What are some of the pitfalls and dangers and areas of concern that we see surrounding email?
Well, email is a very popular tool for scammers. It's a type of scamming called phishing, and that's phishing with a PH. And it's definitely one of the most common and most successful scams because of how easy and cheap it is. Think of how much does it cost you to send an email? Nothing, right? And so you can set up a fake domain, you can, send emails to thousands of people. Email lists can be easily acquired. There are many companies that sell and own data. So you can buy lists of emails and, send scams to do things like, send a malicious attachment that might have spyware, ransomware. It could, ask you to update passwords. There was one that my own mother almost fell for. She knew enough to send it to my brother and I, but she got an email saying a warranty was expired on something she'd purchased years before, a relatively large consumer purchase. So how they knew that she'd done that, I don't know. But, your warranty's out. You need to call this company and renew your warranty, those sorts of things. They really, they could be as benign as like a social media request. They can come looking like they're from Facebook or looking like they're from Instagram or Twitter. And so that's how these scams are so successful, because it's relatively easy to fake how an email looks and can look official. So, same rules apply. With a regular, phone scam, you really want to take a second to consider, what are you looking at? Does this make sense? Don't open any attachments from addresses you don't know. And definitely, I think, slow it down, really slow it down, forward it to someone you trust who you think could help you decipher. But often, if it asks you to click a link, usually clicking a link itself is not going to be too horrible, but it's worth it to take a second and look at the email address it's coming from.
Right.
Is it facebook.com, or is it some misspelled version of it? Does it have periods in the name? Does it have dashes? You can
this
search
idea, that they're misspelled. That means they're international sometimes, right? I mean, they're people. Where are these coming from? Who does this? Who's sitting there trying to make money off this? Is it somewhere far away in some other country? Where are they coming from?
Yes, I mean, there's scams coming from all over the world. From Russia, Nigeria, all over Asia, anywhere there's computers connected to the internet, there are scams. And here in the States, you really just want to make sure you're looking at that is that a bunch of gobbledygook, or is it a real email? The other thing you can do is go ahead and search for previous mails from that provider, if it's your power company or social media or another relative, and compare the two. Are these the same? Because anything that seems too good to be true probably is. If you won an award or prize, you're probably very special and wonderful, but I don't know that necessarily is something that's likely to happen statistically. So, this is why email is probably, I would say, the number one type of scam, because it's so low cost and it sadly works because they've gotten that good at spoofing email addresses and, styling it up. So you really have to stop and
wow.
think.
I coach one of my kids' basketball teams, and I got an email that said, they've noticed my coaching and they want me to come and coach for $10,000 a week in China. And I just have to click on here, and I'm like, I showed my kids because I was so excited, but they all knew immediately it was a scam. Clearly that was a scam. But it's the kind of thing, they somehow knew I was a basketball coach, but obviously that's ridiculous that you know, they're offering that kind of thing. But it's just amazing what they know and how they send this stuff out, and people have to be really careful. And yeah, if it's too good to be true, it's probably not true.
Right. I'm guessing that the team has a website or a social media page. You know, they have a group
That's probably
page
right.
on
Yeah, I
Facebook.
mean, I guess that's it. Something like that. Yeah, and they could figure that out.
They just looked up, you know, coaches by city, built a list. I mean, they can automate this, you know, to some degree, depending on if you're a part of an association, for example. Like many sports have you know, I remember, you know, there was an association when I did debate in high school. So like if you're registered for that, then they could probably find those names through those databases. And then it's just, you know, lining up the data.
Have there been some good prosecutions, some arrests of these scammers that sheds light on their operation? What about that in the last few years?
You know, I would say, you know, I'm not really familiar enough with it to tell you specifics, other than to say that it's definitely been a popular subject for documentaries on Netflix this last year. The Tinder swindler was one that was really popular, of the man who had scammed women from dating sites on Tinder. Took some of them for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Then there was the whole documentary about Anna Delvey, the fake German heiress,
right?
Who was sent to jail. So I would say, you know, people are fed up, and I think there's, you know, possibly more legislation coming around this. I really hope there is, around robo-dialing and text scams, because those seem to be hitting my phone every day, even with all the apps and things I have to protect myself. I still am getting a lot of those. So
what are those? Tell me about those. What kind of? I think we're getting a lot of calls here, but I wonder if they're the same kind of calls. What are you getting?
Yeah, so I get things like, you know, like the power company I mentioned. I get things about, you know, that I'm being audited. I've gotten that one a few times, that I'm in trouble with the IRS. You know, definitely there are usually robo dials. Or there's a very important notice. Sometimes it's just generic.
What about that one? Yeah. What about the one about and maybe this isn't a scam, but it just confounds me, the dealer services. You know, your car warranty or whatever is about to expire, and I just know it's expired a long time ago. But what's that all about?
I think it's, you know, they're selling aftermarket warranties, and you know, when car manufacturers have recalls, for example, they put these out publicly. There's plenty of websites that'll tell you any recall in any car any given time. So all they really have to do is figure out who owns that model of car. Then they can so what they do is they take a little bit of real information and then they sprinkle in the fake. So they know you have certain model, or Mercedes, whatever it is. They know there's a recall on the steering column or the brakes or whatever it is, and that sounds important. So they've got your attention. So there's an emotional plea there, and then that emotional plea then gets turned into action by you, because you want to feel safe in your car. So they'll want to sell you an aftermarket warranty. They'll want to sign you up for some sort of protection or insurance on the car, extra insurances you don't need. I will say there's a car that my father-in-law, who's been deceased over a year, that we came into possession of, and we still, a year and 2 months after he passed, and are getting these fake notices that are meant to look like they're from Ford.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, and they're sending them in the paper mail. So, you know, and he was in his 80s. So, I guess they're, you know, just hoping that he was going to be really concerned that, something was wrong with the car. But I stopped opening.
A few more things. Now, here in Nashville, we're getting tons of calls, people wanting to buy your house. I don't think those are scams, actually, but I don't know. Are you getting that there in Austin? And what is going on with all of those calls?
Yes, so we have a very robust real estate market. We've had a lot of people move to Austin in the pandemic. And so, that's just a numbers game. I wouldn't assume outright that that's a scam, because there are legitimate companies that buy houses that are in foreclosure, or houses that, just maybe the owner's for sale. That's just a numbers game. I don't necessarily think those are always a scam. I think they definitely are annoying, but it's a legitimate transaction to sell a house. So I think that's just a lazy way of doing real estate transactions. I don't necessarily think that is in and of itself scammy, unless of course someone's trying to get you to sign the deed over for some kind of a loan, or signing a dubious mortgage, getting a bunch of money that you're losing equity, or like those kinds of things are also very, very common.
What laws would you like to see passed? What are some laws that would be good to pass?
Well, I wish that the do not call list had that legislation had a little more teeth to it, because I know I've put my phone number on the do not call list multiple times, and I still get calls, solicitor calls, scam phishing calls. I would like to see some serious legislation be put in place for people who don't want to be bothered.
Why doesn't that work more? Yeah, there's a do not call list, but yet it's almost like, it doesn't matter at all that you're on that list.
It changed nothing. It changed nothing for me. And I wish there was a do not text list, because that really is the one I get the most, and I hear people complain about the most. Is how do I stop spam texts? There are apps that claim to do it. I haven't found one that has worked just yet. I do have an app I've used to block robodial calls, and it doesn't actually block them. It just answers them with a message saying this person's screening their calls if the number's not in your phone book.
Wow. All right. We have to take a break, and then we'll come back. We'll talk about, there's also cybersecurity issues, but I want to talk more about some online scams. Google voice scam, fake job. That would be my coaching one. Fake Amazon employees, they call up. So some other scams we have. We'll take a break. Be back right after this.